is a Black Ops 3 tomahawk that I made for the Call of Duty legend Dysmo.
There's no way!
I had another project that I had, and that project was the Black Ops 3 Locus Sniper. And today we are making that. But first, we're gonna have to back up a bit because this thing is huge. In fact, this thing is so big that this is by far the biggest project I have ever worked on. So be sure to stay tuned. You are not gonna want to miss how this turns out. Starting off, we have it broken up into 6 pieces. This is one to make those pieces fit on the printers, but also to make it easier for prep work and then ultimately painting the piece.
And to start, like always, we are going to be smoothing the surface with Bondo. The print on this was pretty solid, so we didn't have to do a ton, but I wanted to make this look really good, so I kind of was a little extra in some parts. Once that dries, of course, then we get to sanding. And because there was a lot of Bondo, there was a lot of sanding.
I don't like sand.
Good morning. It is now the next day and I've got the Locus fully dried. So now we're gonna be doing the filler primer, light coats, bunch of them, and just fill in all of the rest of those little layer lines and stuff like that. Let's go. All right, now we've got everything primed. Did a good job of filling most of those little cracks. Now we're just gonna do a light sand over all of it just to even it all out. And then we should have a really, really good surface. So we're gonna do that and we'll see you after.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Once we're all sanded, then we move to the priming stage with black primer, and we are left with a fully primed model. Now with everything ready, it's time to start our grind for the mastery camo. And I start with a dark purple here, and I decided to start on the stock. It was a good like mix of black parts and the dark matter parts, and it was a pretty manageable size that I could kind of just warm up on and try some different techniques. And the way I started this is really just building up colors. I start with blues and purples and pinks, and essentially I just am putting them on the surface wherever it feels right. And there's sometimes where I go overboard and then kind of bring it back a little bit. And then once I get some like really good shapes, then I hit it again with some highlights. And this is a super satisfying process. I absolutely love painting like this. So once I'm done with the stock, then I move on to some other pieces of the model. I do half of the scope, and then I move on to one of like the middle parts of the barrel or part of the model. It's kind of a random place, but I really like how this one turned out. Then I do the tip of the barrel, and on this one, I wanted to keep it kind of subtle because the reference photos and stuff that I had, the tip definitely had the camo on it, but it was like kind of subdued. So I wanted to emulate that in the model as well. And once those smaller pieces were done, then I started to tackle the main piece, the body, and it's the same process, just bigger. But I did need to keep in mind that there was going to be some parts of this that were going to be painted over with black and then with some metallic and stuff like that, but I had a ton of fun with this.
All right, and here we are. We've got most of the base dark matter done. Here's a big chunk of it. I think it looks great. I also attached the end of the stock. Just used my super glue that I always do with our little plastic dowel. Next thing we need to do is the red splatter or the red speckles that are all over the thing. It's almost like an ember type of effect, but we are gonna use a toothbrush. This is the fun part. Let's get it.
I just dip the toothbrush in some red paint. Sometimes I like to mix in a little bit of water. It just helps it flow better off the brush. And then you kind of get to town and you just have some fun with it. And I definitely did. In fact, I had a little bit too much fun in some spots, and I needed to clean it up with some black. This was inevitable, so it wasn't too bad. But basically, I'm just taking just straight up black paint and then painting over all of the parts that are not the dark matter areas and just clean up that red. Now that we've gone and cleaned everything up, we'll give you kind of a look here. Overall, I think that this looks really great. But the next step is now we got to kind of dirty up the black a little bit. There's a lot of like browns and almost like rust kind of colors on the Locus in game. So with this, we are going to start with a base color of brown, and I put this just right on top of the black. It's very subtle against the black, but it definitely helps just with depth and like making it look interesting. So we put that kind of sparingly through all of the parts that are not dark matter, and then once that dries, then we add on a little lighter brown on top of that, and you start to see that like rust kind of come through. We don't want this to be like rusty and gross, but we still want a little bit of that depth and extra color on the piece. Then once we have that, then I start using some grays, and this really starts bringing things together. And I start using this more of like a highlight and using it like a dry brush to just kind of bring out those high level parts of the model and just let them shine a little bit more. And speaking of shine, then it's time to bust out the gilding wax or rub and buff. And if you've never seen this stuff used before, it is like magic, and it basically turns whatever you want into almost like an antiqued looking metallic, and it just adds a ton of sheen. There's even some parts of this model that are supposed to be like straight up silver pretty much, and I use this for that as well, and it turned out freaking awesome. So I went to town on that, and then we let it dry overnight.
All right, so it's now the next day, and I'm feeling really good about where the piece is at. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the varnish on. So I'm gonna use two different varnishes here. I'm gonna start with a matte varnish, and that's gonna be sprayed over the whole thing. And then once that dries, I'm gonna then do a nice couple of thick coats of gloss varnish only on the dark matter parts, because I feel like the dark matter will really benefit from having that high gloss finish. We'll just bring out all of those colors even more. Yeah, let's freaking get it, huh? All right, now with that sprayed, we have them all on their little standstill, and I'm gonna take the gloss varnish. This is a brush on one, throw it into my little cup here, and then we're gonna brush it on to all of the pieces that are dark matter. Once this process is done, I always like to look over everything, see if like we missed any spots or anything like that. Yeah, but we're close to the finish line here. All right, so we got all the pieces all finished, and now we need to put it together. I'm gonna actually be trying a new glue today. This is some Gorilla Glue. It's an epoxy glue, and I like the epoxy stuff because it hardens just really strong, and this is a huge piece, so we want it to be super strong. And then on all of these pieces, there's these little holes, and we've made these connectors that basically go into the hole, and then that helps line up the pieces and just gives it a little bit of strength when they're together. So I'm gonna do that, and then it turns out like this.
The Locus Sniper rifle from Black Ops 3 finished in dark matter, and I absolutely love this. This is the biggest project I've ever done. I think it turned out really awesome. Hopefully I can get a reaction of Dysmo when he gets this thing. That would be just so freaking cool to see. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to sub to the channel because we have builds like this all the time. And yeah, guys, have a great one, and we'll see you in the next one.